Set in stone and cast in steel.
I've done a fair bit of music in the last 5 years, written for film, produced 3 records for young artists, and then of course the apparatchik collective that is somewhere between mainstream pop music and the arts field, somewhere happily falling in between the chairs, has also resulted in some records. So, you know, I always like this sort of possibility to move between the two. I find it quite inspiring to, or I get deprived of inspiration if I lock too much into one situation. So I find it quite healthy to, it's good for me to have both. So I guess for me the biggest change now coming back to AHA was in fact that it was a little bit like looking at AHA from the outside, the whole history from our beginnings to the end as one thing, and then refocusing my sort of creative energy into that. And that affects how I would write, it affects how I would record, how I would think about it. Really affected my way of writing lyrics. It became by default more retrospective, I guess, in a sense, without feeling the need to delve right back into the past and try to re-establish something or define something that is anyone's idea of what the band is like, was like. I think we're kind of all past that sort of worry about whether the band is seen in the right light, whether it's kind of restricted by people's view of what we were in the 80s. And I think for me, having the opportunity to dip in and out of creative situations have really given me a much more knowledge about how I function in those circumstances, and being able to look at AHA as a completely separate outside thing, and then letting that sort of umbrella and all that it means and all that it has meant for me as an individual, just look at it as a sort of a creative potential and say, you know, I can pick anything from any point in time and work with that. To be honest, with this AHA album, I was surprised how natural it felt for me to be writing lyrics with Morten in mind. I mean, when I write for my own voice, you know, there are big areas that overlap, but there are certain things that I know he'll react to or won't like. But I didn't feel like it was an imposition. I didn't feel like I was trying to make my own album and then would be crushed if he didn't like it. It was more a case of me trying to look for something that would work the best possible way to make the most kind of touching and rewarding music from the possibilities that were there. And I was just really surprised that I'd missed it. I missed thinking about AHA when I wrote, when I recorded. I'm sure that's a feeling that will pass as we get together more often. But that was a real surprise. I mean, I only really started writing lyrics in earnest around the time I would contribute earlier, but writing from my own center came with me discovering that I wanted to sing, or it sort of happened at the same time around 2002. Again, after a long break with AHA, coming back with AHA, a need for something else arose.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's done to me. It's kind of, this time around, it just naturally came from that place. It didn't come from a need I had to express exactly my sentiment, but looking at it as a set of tools, a set of creative tools, and how could they intermingle to create something new. You know, this was a clear break off. It wasn't just a temporary break. it was decided that, let's end it now. Let's not turn into one of those bands that fight their way to the grave, making less and less interesting music and kind of go on each other's nerves. So I think that's probably been good for everyone. I think it's highly recommended for most bands. One of Aha's qualities, Aha's music qualities, has been that we do make music. I think is quite filmic in essence, and I find it quite easy to, you borrow ideas and you borrow expressions from film and visual arts. And literature, I guess, literature for me is at the center of my sort of creative life in many ways. But there is a sort of a filmatic aspect of it that specifically also Morten's voice lends itself to. But it's interesting. I mean, he expresses the same lyrics that if I sang them, they sound very different. So you just, that's something that just this time around felt a lot more natural to me, to write lyrics that would be more suited to him than necessarily feel like they had to come from me. Morten has a very elastic voice, so in many ways you can sort of allow yourself to write quite operatically, but it's not always right for the sentiment of the song. I mean, you mentioned something like Mythomania isn't really a typical Morten song, but he does it in his particular way, and it becomes more Aha because of it. We still have a sense that we never quite made that album that we could make. And that is a strong sense that every time we come back together, whether it's from a break or a breakup, it's always the case that the minute we start thinking about doing anything, whether it's just one-off concert or whatever it is, new material always enters in as the driving force, as the one thing that gets us excited. Well, Rock in Rio feels like, again, a bit of a time capsule in the sense that it was the previous show there at the Maracanã in '91 was such a landmark occasion. Funnily enough, at the time, all I wanted to do was get out of show business. And so it's only in retrospect, hearing so much about it, talking so much about it, that you've sort of raised it on a pedestal as the kind of a pivoting point. Yeah. But it did feel like something that was impossible to say no to, the sort of advent of 30-year anniversary of the band with the advent of 30-year anniversary for Rock in Rio. It was almost like, okay, they're throwing a birthday party for you. Are you going to come? Yeah. And, it sort of pushes the bar up there. You kind of straight in at the top. But I'm fairly confident that we have been around we've done so many things. Some have been successful, some have been less successful. But it's not as if we have to prove our right to be there. It's more that we have to make that a meaningful moment, something that shines, something that glows for people who are there and for us. With three very creative and kind of strong-willed people in a group, there's always a lot of tension and a lot of mythology that goes into how these frictions create, something creative. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's more that the fact that we allowed other external things to come in and be part of our lives, we've enriched our own lives individually, and therefore when we come back to Aha, we are more able to celebrate that union. I am actually looking forward to something I didn't think I would be doing, and I didn't think I would look forward to.
Yeah.
But there is, there's real moments of magic on stage, and it's, we're part of it, but the audience is also very much a part of it. Because you can have 2 or 3 nights in a row with this almost the same audience, the same band, the same set, and one of them stands out as an amazing night, and that is a very, very addictive thing. It's something that people get so addicted to, they sacrifice most other things to get it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something I'm looking forward to now that I've gotten used to the idea.
I really didn't want to quit when we did quit, because I felt, I had a bunch of songs, I wanted to go on. But when it did happen, I mean, I have to say I haven't given it a thought after that, because it's been, I have a son who's 15 now. And that's the one thing about this line of business, like a traveling musician, you miss all that, So I was sort of able to be there in all those years when he went from here to being my height, and you're just being a complete sort of a soccer mom, I take him to tennis 3 times a week. I do this, I do that, so I can get up in the morning, and, I wouldn't have missed that for the, world. But I kind of put it into a sort of like a day job. So I would wake him up, send him to school, and then I would go to the studio, work till he get back from school, and then, so I did get a lot of work done. I mean, I don't think I've been as productive in other years. So it's just really like the only thing I wasn't very productive is actually releasing stuff. So the only thing I released in those years was actually just that one song, which I just more like a freebie for the people who paid attention, called Man-Made Lake. But I think I probably have a soul album ready to go. I have a Savoy album ready to go. I did many songs with a wonderful young singer from New Jersey called Zoe Necco. That is, I think, is a beautiful album. And then, of course, tons of Aha songs. So it's just been like just kind of just the music, no deadlines, just all that. Sometimes in the past, I've been saying you have to sing this song because it's a hit. It's a huge, amazing song, Yeah. But right now, I could just show him tons of stuff, and I could see which one he sort of was kind of leaning towards, or you can kind of like, oh, let me have a look at that one. And so I felt for him as well, it was less sort of going to the dentist. Okay. It was more like, oh yeah, maybe I can do this guy, and you could change the key. Sometimes he felt the chorus was different, so I would change it, write him a new one, and it was much easier than we normally used to. Because we kind of get into this rut where we have to sort of start to define to ourselves what is Aha. And that's where I think we sort of, it gets complicated. It's much better to just do it and then let it happen. We had a very strong old school A&R guy. You can play stuff to over the phone and he would know that's that. It was a very, he signed up Joni Mitchell. He was a very sort of hands-on kind of guy. And now it's a little bit more up to us, Yeah. And it's hard that way, but everybody's doing different things. And then we're also going to decide, or, it can get very messy. Yeah. And it gets very messy. Yeah. So I do miss a little bit of that kind of having some sort of outsider who just hears stuff fresh and can give a little, And I felt that Alan, having known us before we sort of reinvented ourselves into many different forms, he knew from back then who we were. So we can't sort of bullshit him, He just wants to hear the tune. He doesn't want to hear the story. He doesn't want to hear any other surroundings, So it was nice for me to just get his gut feeling on the songs that I've been working on. that song, I mean, though it's got nothing to do with us reinforming or stuff like that, but it's about somebody who, you know, whatever they said when they were 20 and they thought it was 100% true and it was 100% this, it has to be like that, you know. You always find out that life isn't like that. It's always, you know, you just have to let things breathe and do their own thing the way they're supposed to do. So for me, it gets forced when you make this sort of more like this intellectual decision that it has to be like this. That's just your take on it because you want to do this thing and that works with your agenda. But you got to let things breathe. You got to let things happen the way they want to happen. It's a very good audience to play for, and hopefully we'll do a good show. You know, I'm really looking forward to playing the new stuff and playing the old things as well. And we have a lot of new ideas, you know, new things that we can bring to the stage. So yeah, it should be a blast. That is the sort of thing that we're sort of getting used to, that having this stuck around for so long is like, you know, what are we, you know, I believe there's a lot of fans out there who wants to hear new stuff, and you know, but obviously some people only want to hear the singles or whatever they know. So we just have to pick something that hopefully is a good balance between the old and new. I moved from Soho to Brooklyn. Okay. So I you know, built myself a beautiful studio and set it up and bought myself a turntable again. Okay. I went on eBay, bought my whole crap, all the Aha stuff, because I didn't have any of that online. I thought I have to hear how it was, you know. And I'm buying lots of old new bands now that I'm buying on vinyl, because it just kind of like, it's just sort of a different, because it's so much harder to flip around. You sort of put it on and let it sit there for a while, and I like the sound of it, and it sort of makes it just a different listening experience. We do make it very hard on ourselves, you know. We do sort of go on each other, and it can get pretty sort of ulcer promoting at times, you know. So I just think we just can't help ourselves. We just have to do it this difficult way. Okay. And then it just happens, whatever happens, you know. It's not really that master plan for us. We just sort of, we somehow get through it, and then we release it, and then, you know, whatever happens, you know. So we've been lucky, I think, is that, you know, whenever there's a, you know, downward spiral in one territory, we managed to have a uplift in another, and we sort of gone like that, and people sort of discover us as we go. And of course, you know, now we see, you know, such a big variety of ages listening to our stuff. So it is kind of fun to see that, wow, you're 20 and you're listening, you know, I mean, and you're on the opposite of the scale. So we do, that is a very nice thing to say, you know, to see that, you know, it doesn't really, I don't feel like it's targeted for one particular audience or another. It's just, if you know, if you want it, it's there.
I've been very good, actually. I'm looking back on 2 albums, solo albums that I've done, and which have kind of been in a development, I suppose, sort of getting me out of an aha type of mindset, I suppose, and on to my own things, which is not the same. And the first album I did, Out of My Hands, were, like I've said before, like a transitional thing. Quite openly just testing songwriting relationships and just treading the water in a few directions. And during that process, we did the album, and I also met up with Peter, whom I struck a very interesting writing relationship with, and it led on to the second solo album, Brother, which is I think to people who know it, also see that it's more of a handwritten thing with my name on it. Also Peter, he was really kind of a band. We became a band, really. I've sat with Peter also in the process starting to home in on the aha stuff, and so he's very much part of that process where he represents my center of development, you could say, as Magne has his own and Paul has his, and looking to be a very good way to do things. It didn't start as an aha thing at all. Because I certainly felt free from that way of thinking, and that's been important, because your system, your spirit has to kind of believes what it believes. It responds to what it does, and if you have an agenda there, wanting it to become something, then it really just holds you back. That was not the case, and it just felt it was interesting. It's always interesting, and songs are songs. And if Paul has a few songs up his sleeve and wants me to sing them, to try and sing them and see what happens, then that's, to people outside, that would be an aha happening, so to speak. But to us, it wasn't. It wasn't about that. It was freed from that. So it could just be he and I coming together on a song, looking at something. For good and bad, I don't think we are particularly focusing on what we come across as. We don't see ourselves from outside. We look for the inspiration of music itself and lyrics and the sort of the spirit of that, and to just be a cover band of ourselves would be that. It would be just something which would very much fall short of our own expectations and our own desires, our yearning to be doing this at all. We've never been entertainers, really. We are more engagers. That's where we come from. And I think that's what you're asking about, really. That is what lies behind. That it's those sort of mechanisms in us that makes us, turn out the way we do. So if we are to be active, it means then everything that it meant back in the early 80s and ever since. We've sent an invitation to all 198,000 to redo this. No, it's very much the right thing to do. When that came, kind of it all surfaced more or less, coherently in a way, or at the same time, and some of it has been engineered to an extent by people who see the opportunity and possibility and says, what if that happened and this, and there's been some of that, but also very much things sort of coming to the surface at a particular point in time where it falls into place, and so it's well, the natural process of this is partly why I think it works the way it does, or is doing now. I do think we are kind of relaxing into who we are. We have a very long adolescence behind us. and which is still there, because we keep looking for who we are. I certainly do in my case, but also with the band, and that space for growth is vital, of course. That's where vitality is. At the same time, it's also wonderful to, with the right mindset, embrace some of the things that we have created in the past. And we have to do both.
I mean, for all of us, it's probably somewhat of a time machine journey. But there are every time we do this, it's a kind of there's some differences that you sort of notice, and I think at the end of the day, we have probably felt in the past that AHA was not allowing us each individually probably enough freedom, or we didn't allow each other enough freedom in some ways. It's a kind of a binding thing that you get into. But if time apart allows us to do things in a different way and celebrate and allow each other that kind of, if we get a little better at it each time, then it's, certainly worth it.
For me, very important. I mean, the years that I've had now have allowed me to release things, practically speaking as well, that I feel very good about, feel strong about, and that's something I will be carrying on with as well. It charges my batteries for this type of thing as well, to the idea of getting back together and frame something again. This feels, buoyant to me.
Musically speaking, I think I'm sort of hard pushed to find two more talented guys to work alongside whenever there's a musical project. And that's that's something that's always been there. It's just, you just got to sort of shut out a lot of the bullshit that we create along the way. But there's no doubt that is there's a specific part of me that gets activated once I know it's in this setting, and that triggers something that I'm still curious about, triggers something that I still find very rewarding for my own creative life. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing it.
I mean, some of the songs here, actually, the first time I played some of these songs for Morten, it was actually with stuff that I'd done with a very talented girl called Zoe Necco that I've done a bunch of songs with, and same thing there, we're just trying out lots of different songs. So it was kind of cool, instead of me whining the melody in his ear, he could hear somebody else sing it in a totally different key and in a totally different setting. So like a different entrance point, You can do this stuff in so many different ways that, it's kind of cool to just, turn it inside out and see what happens.
The idea of doing Rock in Rio again after, as a 30-year anniversary for them, and with our history with it as well, is a different type of invitation, I think, than it felt wrong to not do,
Well, hell, for me, I just want to do it and enjoy it.
No, but I mean,
I don't care about you guys. I want to enjoy it this time.
But it's when it initially becomes a topic, you go from being in a world of your own where AHA is not really on your agenda anymore. So that's where you are, and then doing Rock in Rio is 100% an AHA thing. So first you need to get your head around that. And then it is Rock in Rio, and it is in this type of setting or context difficult to just push to the side. and it ended up being one of the sort of elements that made this happen. All of this.
We shouldn't try to make it small and intimate. You know, that's a pretty much a given.